Hi, let me just start quickly the short introduction for today, because I know there's going to be a lot of people, so there will be a lot of questions, and let's leave sufficient room for at least the start of a discussion in this hour. I'm Barbara Hogenboom. I'm director of CEDLA in Amsterdam. And we have these CEDLA lectures every 3 weeks or so. And usually we invite guests from other institutions, but we also like to sometimes have a colleague of our own. And today that is Rutgerd Boelens. So he's a chair with us in political ecology of water in Latin America, special chair in the University of Amsterdam. He has a position also as a chair, professor of water governance and social justice in Wageningen University. And he is a visiting scholar, visiting professor, both in Peru in the Universidad Católica and in Ecuador in the Universidad Central. So he's very well connected. I think that also explains for a lot of you being here today. And he works on water justice, water governance already for a long time. So I'm not going to start listing all his publications. You can find that, of course, online, but we're very happy that he's here today to talk about his new projects that are just starting on Riverhood and on river commons. And we'll hear much more about those ideas and the project that he's working on. And I'm also very glad that we have Denise Roca Servat from the Bolivariana University. That's not a full title. I lost track of the title. Sorry, Denise. In Medellin, Colombia. She has worked also for a long time on water justice, water governance, written extensively on that also not so long ago in CEDLA's journal Erlax, a nice article. She is also now chairing with two others the Grupo de Trabajo of Claxo on political ecology of the South, which is a very big working group of Latin American and other scholars. So I'm very pleased that Denise is here from Medellin. She will respond only briefly after Rutgerd's lecture to leave also some time for Q&A. So I think I will start giving the floor to Rutgerd. Let me just announce, as you can see, this lecture is recorded. So what we will record is Rutgerd's words and Denise. And then when we open up for Q&A, we will stop the recording. But, you know, other people who want to look back at the lecture will be able to very soon when we post it on the YouTube channel of CEDLA. Let me see, Gaia, Geraldine, is there anything I forget to mention at this point? I think we can simply start with the lecture right now. Okay? Rutgerd, welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barbara, Denise, Gaia, and all the others for being here with us in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and throughout the world. I see in Latin America, many people from Latin America, but also other places. Unfortunately, we cannot be really together, but after this this session, we have a gather town where we can meet informally also. It's a real pleasure to talk about the issues of Riverhood and river commons. Shall I share my screen, Gaia? What is the,
yes, you can. Yeah.
I have a PowerPoint to share. Okay. Riverhood and river commons. Two recent projects which have not started yet. They are to come in summertime, September, July. We will start the two projects. So what I will do is share some reflections on the issues that we are going to work on the types of collaboration, on the themes because we don't have any results yet. Yeah, and I know that you have far more results than I have here at this side of the screen. So please join also in the discussion and in the gather town to express those, because it are two large projects that are to be set up together. No results yet, but what I will do is share especially some concepts and some questions. I will explain some of the questions we as project partners have in order to implement these ideas. Riverhood. Yeah, what is Riverhood? Nobody knows. Actually, that's also the big question. I found the word Riverhood on the internet a year ago, and it was an ancient English word, a concept that has lost since then, that has been lost since then. And it means, in the 19th century in England, it meant the state of being a river. So in all its senses, what is a river? Yeah. And what is being a river? That is the question that's behind both Riverhood and River Commons. River Commons, the notion of commons, most of you know what it's about. I will come to that also. Well, the background of the whole thematic area of the projects of the subject is what you see over here. I hope everybody can have a clear look at the screen. Rivers contaminated, depleted, diverted throughout the world. Yeah, this is not a Latin American issue. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's also an African issue. It's also a Dutch issue. It's a European issue. It's an American issue. It's everywhere, an Asian issue. Everywhere in the world, you see this happening. And these plastics now flowing into the sea, one of the major issues of our time. So that is the background. Yeah. Another important background is what we see here. Yeah. The domestication of nature. Yeah. The domestication of wild flowing water through large-scale hydraulic infrastructure. How to dominate nature, how to conquest nature. That has been an effort since ages. And here I want to mention utopia. Utopia, you all have heard of it. Most of you might have read it. It was the first fundamental criticism, or one of the first fundamental criticism on capitalism. How capitalism was growing up in England, in the commons, for example, that were enclosed by the capitalist enterprises. So it was one big claim for a better humanity. At the same time, how it was done, it was by domestication of nature. It was by domestication of people. It was by organizing people in a straight way, in a one uniform way. The utopian river-as-ecosociety, there's not been much written about it, but if you read Thomas More's Utopia, you can see that it's entirely canalized. It's entirely urbanized. All the creeks in Utopia were urbanized for human consumption. So it is a very contradictory book, which is at the basis, let's say, of European thinking in terms of policies, politics, how to organize. And fundamental here is first, for example, living according to nature. So that is something that what you hear now in all the policies at this moment, building with nature, working with water, and so on. At the same time, it should be universally adopted. And it is in order to construct happiness. The happiest basis for a civilized community. Thomas More gives all the ingredients of how to build a civilized community. How was it done? Utopia, it was separated from the mainland. The mainland was barbarian. There were the indigenous peoples. It was separated in order to isolate it as an island. Who did so? Who did all the work? The slaves. Every utopian family had 2 slaves at least. And all the canals were dug by the slaves. So suffering was part of building this ideal society from the outset. Well, maybe as much as Utopia from Thomas More, it was also the work, The New Atlantis of Francis Bacon. Yeah, most of you have heard of or read this book. I just saw the subtitle is A Work Unfinished. Well, I think that if you look at this picture, you can see that it's almost finished already. Yeah, the World Bank is bringing back big bad dams. Socialism builds the new world. And the Great Stalin Plan for the transformation of nature. All the large dams we see in the world, exported from the global north to the global south, and now the global south is championing the building of dams in order to domesticate wild flowing nature. In Europe, important examples is, for example, Spain and Franco. Franco also famous, let's say, not just for his oppression of people, but also for his oppression of rivers. He was the one who tried to domesticate nature and people and organize them at once. Spain hurt us with its dryness, its poverty, with our needy villages. And all of Spain is taken away by these great national hydraulic projects. As no one other, he was inaugurating all kinds of dams and mega hydraulic works. Well, we Dutch also know of it, and we still do. How to transform nature for the purpose of serving humanity, but in a very particular way. Here you see some pictures of how we, the Dutch, we feel that we have water in our genes, that we are engineers by heart, and water engineers, let's say, from before we were born, how we export that to the south, to other places around the world. Well, at CEDLA and at Wageningen, I think very important, interesting work has been done on how to understand this drive to domesticate both nature and humans at once. Not separately, but seeing them as socio-natures that have to be domesticated and governed through water governance. The work, for example, by Juan Pablo Hidalgo, Agua, Poder y Tecnología in Ecuador, studying 3 mega hydraulic works. The almost ready work by Bibiana Duarte, hydrosocial imaginaries, contested utopias and territorial struggles in Colombia and Spain, a brilliant work also. And also forthcoming territories of water, space, infrastructure, power, and imaginaries in Turkey, Spain, and Peru by Elena Hummes. And there are many more, many more, and especially also in the audience we have here together. Many of you have also written important work on how the domestication of water, domestication of nature went hand in hand with the domestication and governance of people. Governance of water, or water governance, from a political ecology point of view, is not so much the governance of the resource water. It's the governance of humans and water at once. Water is a means to govern people. So then comes the fundamental question. What is order and what is chaos? And how have they been presented, let's say, throughout the ages? Why are certain water knowledges, worldviews, values, institutions considered legitimate, have authority, have credits, and many others, the non-Western, for example, or the non-local, or the local and vernacular knowledges, they are denied existence. They are seen as chaos. Many authors have written about it, many philosophers, many scientists, and so on, especially the social sciences. Here is one, Zygmunt Bauman. He talked about the gardener metaphor, that there was a large project of purifying humanity and purifying society, nature and humans at once. Socio-natural domestication through the purification by taking out the weeds, by making everything in order, in straight lines. Others have talked about the project of governmentality. Most famous, obviously, Michel Foucault. Taking out the weeds in order to order society. But who are those weeds? And what are those weeds? What can we learn from those weeds? Well, there comes the notion of riverhood, I think. how to understand all those systems which are not seen by anybody, which are not perceived, which are not studied, which are not taken into account in policies, which are not there in water legislation, which are not there in environmental legislation. Rivers and river systems as being both simultaneously material, social, and symbolic. They always entwine. They always go together. And what you see in many societies, vernacular societies, local societies, indigenous societies, but also increasingly encounter policies that the rivers are not anymore to be seen as objects, but as subjects, ecological subjects, legal subjects, moral subjects, political subjects. And therefore, obviously, we see different approaches to how to understand river systems, how to understand those social, natural, hydro-social entities. Because different groups have different ideas about how to see them, understand them, know them, work with them, and so on. Rivers as always disputed, contested, co-production among, at the one hand, humans, and the other hand, the non-humans. How to take into consideration the non-humans, and not just the humans as Thomas More and Francis Bacon did, and all the others. Well, therefore, the Riverhood project is very much focused on how to understand the new water justice movements. What are they? Well, transdisciplinary, not monodisciplinary, not just interdisciplinary, but they really integrate natural social sciences, but together also with local knowledges, with local perspectives, with vernacular, with indigenous knowledges, and so on. They're multi-actor, they are multi-scale. They go from the local to the regional to the international. They're coalitions, and they challenge the expert visions that have been prevailing for so long and which are so powerful in order to claim environmental justice. Then we have got the river commons. The commons, the communities, the coalitions, networked socio-ecological systems. So it's not just human, it's both social and ecological. Socio-ecological systems that integrate the human and natural communities. Later, I will give one example to practice river stewardship and co-governance based on interdependence among humans and nature. We are part of nature. We are dependent on nature, and nature depends on us. Shared river livelihoods, interests, values, and knowledges. Well, together, those water justice movements, transnationally, translocally, and the river commons, they integrate, they interact, and together they defend, organize, and try to make rivers alive again, with many, many ideas how to do that. So Riverhood is about how do the new water justice movements inspire and shape river and living strategies, institutions, and practices, and how can they potentiate new approaches for healthy, but also equitable water governance. Then we've got river commons, very close to that, and we will try to integrate them closely. How do innovative river governance initiatives, so sharing governance among diverse actors, dynamize river commons and regenerate river ecologies? And how can we understand them in a transdisciplinary way, with methods, concepts that are new, in order to understand? Well, in the past 20 years, we've worked with many of you on the issues of water justice, justitia hydrica, on studies in different parts of the world, in 4 large domains. The one is the struggle for the right to equality, distributive justice, socio-economic justice. The other one is cultural justice, the struggle not for the right to equality, but for the right to be different. And as indigenous peoples know, they always need to go together. They are not separate issues. Then there is a struggle for the right to participation, governance participation, representational justice. And there is the issue of ecological justice, regeneration, also thinking of future generations of both nature and people. How then to see this framework, not just through human eyes, but also through nature eyes. Distributive justice, not just for humans, but also for nature. cultural justice and recognition, not just for humans, but also for nature. How can nature participate in policy making as a subject? And how to think of future generations and not just this generation. Well, within the Riverhood and River Commons ideas, we've got an analytical framework which is very basic and is oriented to in order to make the questions we have: river as eco-society, river as territory, river as subject, and river as movement. With each of them, there's one question. River as eco-society. The question is, how are river systems configured? And by at once, local hydrology, ecology, climates, human imaginations, technologies, and interventions across space and timescales. Well, in order to go into the river as eco-society idea, let's quickly go to Colombia and see if this works with a short video from Fundación Alma. I hope you can see the screen. Let me go. I cannot show the full. In order to understand how those rivers are functioning in different parts of the world, what we did.
We can't hear the video, Rutgerd.
Sorry?
We can't hear the audio, I think.
You can't see the audio? Okay.
Es una mujer.
Now you can?
Y los que están pariendo no son solo los peces, sino es el mismo río. Es la posibilidad de un río orgánico, la realidad de un río vivo, de un río que tiene movimiento, de un río que es cambiante, que en el invierno es un río y en el verano es otro. ¿Cómo hacer un mapa de un río que puede cambiar en su composición, en su estructura, de una forma tan abrupta de un mes a otro? En un mes puedes tener 3 metros en una columna de agua en un lugar, en un bosque, incluso un bosque puede estar sumergido completamente, y en otro momento del año eso es una playa seca. Eso tristemente ha sido utilizado por muchos poderes locales, regionales, nacionales, para apropiarse de eso. Llegan y lo mapean en verano y dicen la ciénaga no es toda esa, o el río no es todo ese, y entonces empieza, digamos, a hacer un proceso indebido, digamos, de apropiación de todo esto que es un bien público, es un bien de todos. De medidas construidas con Horacio, con María Benítez, con Livia Arciniegas, con Reinaldo Rico, con Wilfrido García, con Johnny Estrada, con Omar Guarín, estoy hablando de líderes a lo largo del río, distintos. Alirio allá arriba en el Alto Magdalena, Juan III, Calixto, los quiero nombrar porque son seres de carne y hueso que en este momento están dándose una lucha por no perder esto, que es su vida.
Nosotros sabemos cuando el río va a crecer, sabemos cuando van a haber cambios de tiempo. ¿Por qué? Porque los animales nos lo dicen. En el río hay una vainita que se llama la oruguita. Comienza a latir, es cuando el río va a crecer. Cuando los caimanes y las babillas comienzan a pujar, cuando comienzan a pujar muy de seguido es porque de pronto va a haber un temblor, algo feo va a pasar, ellos nos avisan. Canta un animal y yo ya le conozco el sonido. Como ahí, nos estamos sintiendo acompañados. ¿Por qué? Por los animales. Y ellos nos mantienen acompañando a nosotros, tanto como los animales, como las aves, como las babillas, cuando comienzan a roncar. Es como, usted no lo va a creer, el pescado también tiene su canto. El pescado en tiempo de soe, lo que es el bocachico hembra y el bocachico macho, ellos roncan cuando van saliendo para desoven. Ese es el único tiempo que usted lo oye roncar, cuando hay tiempo de soven. Y eso ustedes ahí se paran el caño por donde van a pasar y eso es una sola roncacina. Eso se siente hermoso.
O sea, los peces tienen voz.
Claro, los peces tienen voz. ¿Usted se imagina dónde esta charca se llegará a secar? ¿Usted se imagina dónde eso se llegara a acabar? Para mí es la empresa, es la fuente de trabajo, es el ser. En este momento, como pescador, es lo que más quiero. Río Magdalena, la charca de Wageningen, ese es el futuro de nosotros los pescadores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I continue. The second question, river as territory, the second concept. Yeah, how do different stakeholders, actors imagine and seek to build river systems as hydrosocial territorial complexes, contesting how territory should look like? Here we see a picture of like a puzzle, how to make territory. That's a fundamental question for policymakers, but also for all kinds of water cultures, how to shape water, people, ecosystems, yeah, through the composition of all the elements we have in life. Yeah,
Rutgerd?
How to work together with, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but for some reason the slides now look more vague than they did before. I don't know what changed, but maybe it will help if you just put the slide you talk about large instead of having the next slide there. I don't know if they're... Do you know how to do this? Don't stop sharing your screen.
No, okay.
Oh, now it's getting actually sharp again. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a little bit small for those of you who see you on the side as well, but okay, good.
I cannot see.
Please continue. No, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the puzzle of making river systems, and how do different people look differently at that? How to make order, why, and who makes the order? Yeah, it's the question about the struggles. It's a question, the struggle over who makes the rules, who has authority, who gets the resources, whose worldviews are important and whose are excluded, who can govern the rivers. What we see then is in one particular space, different ideas, territories are at once present over there and compete with each other. And the outcome depends on power struggles. So this question, this domain asks about power in water governance, power in territorial river governance. Rivers are not external to the society, but they embody its contradictions and its struggles. You see it everywhere happening. Then the third domain, the third ontology or question is river as subject, which is increasingly important in these days. In what ways do the formal, but also the informal, the non-formal, the indigenous water knowledge systems approach rivers as moral, legal, and political subjects? And how do rights of nature translate into particular river co-governance projects around the world? It's a global concept, but it's very different in India, from Colombia, from Ecuador, from New Zealand, and so on. Also, the Dutch now want to make the Maas de Baas, for example. What does it mean? How can we learn from what is happening in Colombia? How can we learn from what has happened in Ecuador? But also, which are the challenges if you translate it from the one place to the others? Here the question, which is raised in literature very oftenly, should rivers have rights? A growing movement says yes. But what are the consequences? What does it mean if a concept travels from the one place to the others? Will it lose its identity? Or will it be captured by powerful groups, for example? Then the third domain, river as movement. This asks for the water justice movements that pop up everywhere. The new practices that they bring from the one place to the other. How they innovate the riverhoods, the ideas of what is a river. It's now entirely different from 20 years ago, for example. Which experiences bring they from the one place to the other? And also, what does it mean for environmental justice? Here we see, for example, dam removal Europe. The last few years, 5,000 obstacles in rivers and dams have been removed. Here we see the new water culture movement in Spain, defending the rivers that were once urbanized and dammed by the Franco regime, for example. And how is this water justice then experienced by those who are excluded, by those who are discriminated and exploited? We're not looking so much for universal definitions or legal definitions and legal approaches. How do they ground in particular realities on the ground? Here an example, for example, how this hybridization takes place of norms, of organizations, of views, of values. How the local is embedded in the global and the global in the local. We see, for example, how water rights are being shaped, how water law is being shaped, not by governments, not by the institutions, but by the people on the ground. How local water law is a mixture, hybridization of different sources of law, for example. It means that those new water justice movements try to involve those actors and views that are sidelined, and that they want to bring them to the fore. Like, for example, in the article of Denise, sí a la vida, al agua y al territorio. Movements that are moving things, that are changing things. They travel, they bridge, they translate. Here at the right hand, you see a picture that or a drawing that I made 20 years ago about how water flows through this world, through the upper world and through the netherworld in the Andean countries. It's an ancient vision which you find in particular places. On the top, you've got the Apus, the territorial lords. You've got Pachamama, Mother Earth. But now, if you now go to the Andean countries, you see those Apus, those mountain lords. You see them traveling. You see the Mother Earth also traveling from the one place to the other. People learn from each other, and they use also the mountain lords and the power of the mountain lords in order to defend their waters against, for example, extractivism, against mining companies, against hydropower installations. So how to bring the groups together in order to study this together with many partners in different places of the world? Well, the idea is to do so in environmental justice labs or river governance labs. The idea is to, in particular places, investigate the river systems through co-creation of knowledge and co-creation of action also. Different actors working together, transdisciplinary, cross-culturally throughout the world, exchanging, educating also with students, and having policy debate and action about entirely new approaches in order to work on those four main domains: river-as-ecosociety, river-as-subject, river-as-movement, and river-as-territory. How do movements, how do commons work on that in order to find new solutions? Then the projects, very briefly. Here we see at the left hand the Riverhood project. Those are 4 PhDs which would investigate cross-continentally rivers in Colombia, Netherlands, Ecuador, and Spain. Each PhD would investigate two sites, together with the local actors within the local environmental justice labs, and the river commons at the same hand, 9 sandwich PhDs in the global south. And they work in Colombia, in India, in Thailand, in South Africa, Zambia, Uruguay, South Africa. But they also will engage with what's happening in Spain and in the Netherlands, for example, through secondments, through training, collective training. And there will also be a worldwide training exchange for master students. So these are the projects or the elements that are in the 2 projects. But obviously, we would like to see that this broadens far beyond also these cases, with other countries, with other partners, and so on. Many people are already or will be involved in these projects, but the idea is to also work on a collective movement, on collective action, on collective debate, so that we really can make a change. Thank you very much. And I give now the floor, or Barbara gives the floor to Denise.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Rutgerd, for your lecture, and also for the pictures and the part of the video. I hope at some point we will be able to also share that video. So maybe you, yeah, thank you for stopping the screen sharing. We now open the floor for debate, and after giving the word to Denise Roca as discussant, all of you who are here, well, not really all of you because we're with more than 100 persons, but we hope to give a room for some questions and answers with those of you who are here until 5 o'clock. So if you have a very pressing question, maybe you can already put in the chat the topic or very briefly the question that you have, so we get an idea of what are the subjects that you have questions about. And after 5 o'clock, we will move to another space, and all of you who have some time, you are very welcome to join us, and we'll give some details at the end of this lecture. So there will be more time for discussing, for talking. Please, Denise, I know it will be hard for you to be brief, but help us to kind of kick off the exchange of ideas with some thoughts, some questions that you may have after Rutgerd's lecture.
Yes, thank you. Do you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, it's a real pleasure to continue the collaboration, to think about water justice. And so my comments come from a place as a woman scholar activist from Latin America, but currently living in Colombia. And the importance of this research and this research project that Rutgerd is putting up with an extensive view of a lot of collaborative from many researchers from around the world, but also with the idea of collaborating with peasant communities, with indigenous peoples, with Black communities. So coming from Colombia right now, it's important to talk a little bit about how the territory shapes my approach and my academic interest. So rivers in Colombia form a voluminous interconnected hydrosocial territories draining into 4 areas: the Caribbean, the Pacific Ocean, the Orinoco River, the Amazon River Basin. And it's important to think about this idea that Orlando Fals Borda, important intellectual that thought about not only about popular science and the relationship between academia and popular knowledge, but also about the amphibious culture. The amphibious culture that explains practices, technologies, conducts farming, fishing, hunting practices that characterize the people who live in Colombia, northern part, but also I think that the amphibious culture is all around Colombia. So this concept of amphibious as an analytical tool helps explore the fluidity of life between land and water, human, non-human, the rhythms, the temporalities, the multiplicity of changes and transformations of rivers, plants, animals, mythic beings, and even the names of the people, because many times the names of the people are given depending on where the river, whereabouts the river they live. So this amphibious being, I think, is something that I wanted to share also with the idea that Rutgerd is presenting, and as a point of departure of the situated knowledge where I am. And some of my comments, I have 3 big comments through 3 big sections.
But you have to be, sorry, Denise, but you really have to be brief.
Yes, 3 big sections. One is about rivers, how rivers make us think about power relations in this geometry of asymmetries. So I'd like to point about the idea that the tension between expert knowledge and local knowledge, but also the tension between the academic geopolitics of power and how academia, if in order to like really come and collaborate with other civil society and peasants have to rethink its power. Then the other idea I wanted to share with you relates to the role of the state in all these new ways of thinking environmental justice and the possibility of thinking about river as a subject of rights. What is the role of the state? Where is the state as well in this collaboration that Rutgerd has mentioned? How to think about the state and this black box, how to include as well bureaucracies who will implement all these ideas of the river as a subject of rights. The second is about violence. Violence is very important here because every single day they're killing environmental leaders. Just today, another woman from Putumayo who was really defending her territory was murdered. So we're seeing this idea of violence not only about human violence, but also talking about the sixth extinction of the planet and the ecological extinction. So this idea of violence in relationship to Riverhood is also important as a comment. And third is the idea of commons. So I think that from political ecology in Latin America, it will be a very good opportunity to discuss how we are seeing new ways of thinking about collective gatherings, communal ways of defending rivers, land, water. And as Rutgerd mentioned, there are many new environmental movements that are working on the ground and that are also giving us real ideas of new conceptual ways of thinking about the commons. Of course, I don't have much time to go in depth about these ways. There is a book that was just published with Claxo that is entitled, So the Struggle for the Commons and Alternatives to Development in the Face of Extractivism, that maybe many of you can read. But these are just three things that I wanted to point out. One is rivers, also thinking about the geometries of power and the very complex, even the reflexive ones of us as academia and our hierarchies. The second, the one about violence and how to think violence. And the third, the one about commons and the possibility that there is new grounds here in Latin America to think about commons that could also be helpful for other parts in the world. So these are just some of the comments I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. We'll need more time and a big seminar on this, including with more time for you as well. So that's for next time. Rutgerd.
Well, Denise, thank you very much. And I really appreciate very much your questions and your comments and all your work you've done on these subjects also. Initially, we wanted to name the project Amphibian Commons. Yeah, and that was because of Orlando Falsborda. Yeah, he coined that concept, which is very powerful and important. And it's also strange that it's known in Latin America, but not in the rest of the world. How come? Yeah, that's an issue of power. That's an issue of knowledge that has been accumulated, let's say, in the West. We all know that the Dutch are the water expert, but we don't know that also the Colombians are the water expert. We are exporting our knowledge to Colombia. How come? Yeah, and what does it mean? How can we build more horizontal relationships? That's the fundamental issue. So thank you very much. And indeed, Juan Carlos Rodriguez, who has Gutierrez, who has made the video of Colombia, he talks also about the amphibian commons, yeah, the amphibian cultures in the Rio Magdalena. So please see the whole video. Yeah, that would be very, very interesting. The issue of power and expert knowledge, yes, this is fundamental, an issue here in this project, and also the role of the state. Yeah, like for example, rights of nature, how they have been monopolized in particular places in India by a right-wing Hindu government in order to do away with other peoples who are not Hindu. Yeah, so it's also an issue of who is the guardian, who is responding for nature, who is the spokesperson for nature. That's a battlefield. And then obviously there comes the issue of violence against humans and violence against nature. They go together. Yeah, so that's very important issue of studies. And the new wave or the new waves of how to define the commons, how to see the commons, what you say that's happening in Latin America, you see it everywhere. You see it also in the Netherlands, you see it in Spain, you see it in Africa, you see it in Asia. So how can we cross bridges? How can we learn from each other? So many commons are suddenly popping up everywhere in order to co-govern the rivers and co-govern the waters. How can we exchange and learn from each other? That's the fundamental issue to be dealt with.